Let's move over to the running backs. Bijan Robinson tops the love list here. The Falcons get a real quarterback in Kirk Cousins. They get a vertical field stretcher in Darnell Mooney. They did lose Van Jefferson, Matt Collins, and Jonnu Smith.
But, here's the thing about Kirk Cousins. And Kirk Cousins did not make the love list because I think he's still like a borderline top 10, 12-ish quarterback. He's still what he is, right?
Top 12 Kirk Cousins.
Top 12 Kirk Cousins. But Bijan Robinson, Drake London, everyone gets improved in a massive way by Kirk Cousins, who is, a legitimately, lower tier 1 quarterback, but still a tier 1 quarterback, getting him there. So Bijan Robinson, being coached by not Arthur Smith, that's a win. That's a free agency move. Like literally just not having Arthur Smith there, I think is just a massive win. And Raheem Morris kind of addressed this at his combine press conference. It's like, that, in essence, he said some version of, I'm paraphrasing here, but basically like, if the Falcons had done what they were supposed to do last year, he wouldn't have been here. And partially it's the quarterback play, and partially I think it's the usage of Bijan Robinson. But it'll be a much more efficient offense under Kirk Cousins. You think about the last 4 years that Kirk Cousins was in Minnesota, Vikings top 5 in the NFL in yards per game and red zone drives. They're going to be in scoring position a lot more often. Bijan Robinson's going to be used like a true workhorse running back that he's drafted to be. So this is great news for Bijan Robinson. Look, fantasy value comes from opportunity and usage. And I think, Jay, Josh Jacobs landing in Green Bay is a perfect situation for that.
Absolutely, just because there's no one else really there for him. And he's shown that he can handle a workhorse type of load. And the fact that the Packers offense is so good, he's got in a situation with a better offensive line, should be in scoring position a lot more than he was with the Raiders. I mean, he could absolutely lead the league in rushing touchdowns, rushing yards, which we forget he literally did 2 years ago on a team that had a losing record. So I think if he can stay healthy, he could be an absolute monster in Green Bay.
Packers were a top 12 team last year in yards per game and scoring offense. His only competition is A.J. Dillon. A.J. Dillon,
not good.
Not good. Hashtag not good. Hashtag analysis. We talked about this a little bit as well when it happened, but another guy that makes the love list because of where he landed in his touchdown equity is Derrick Henry.
And he still is very good, Derrick Henry. And he just fits what Baltimore likes to do. It's a very varied run scheme. They like pullers. They like balancing gap and zone runs. And Henry's a guy that can really, really do it all. You get him working off tackle. He's a nightmare for DBs to come up and deal with. And I mean, Baltimore has a lot of work left to do on this offensive line. They've lost both starting guards. They traded Morgan Moses at tackle. But it just feels like a franchise, Jay, that you believe in figuring it out in the trenches for Derrick Henry.
Yeah, I mean, they are the one team, probably of every team in the league, that most deserves the benefit of the doubt and just the trust that they're going to put guys in the right position to succeed. And I think the value of Lamar Jackson, and this is a reason why he won MVP, is that, this idea that he shows up in ways that don't show up in the box score. And the biggest way with that is just how much he helps the running game. Because there has to be someone assigned to cover Lamar Jackson, and that just means there's just one less person in the box. And Derrick Henry has spent his entire career running into loaded boxes, and he's not going to have to deal with that nearly as much in Baltimore. I think the only issue with Derrick Henry is that I think Keaton Mitchell is really, really good, and I think that he's going to have to get at least some run, even if it's only 5-6 carries or whatever. But I don't think it matters a great deal for Henry, given that he's still going to get the massive share of the workload, and he's going to be the goal line back.
Correct. And by the way, Keaton Mitchell coming off a pretty serious injury too as well. Gus Edwards is gone. We don't expect J.K. Dobbins to come back to this team either. So, I mean, it's just like there's actually not a lot. Not that Henry was ever going to have any competition, but he'll have less competition than he had last year with Tajay Spears, I would argue, because what him and Keaton Mitchell do are very different. Last year, the Baltimore Ravens, their running backs, all the running backs for the Ravens combined, for 1,696 rushing yards, almost 1,700 rushing yards, and 20 rushing touchdowns. Again, that doesn't count Lamar Jackson. That is just the Baltimore running backs last year. And that's a list that's like Gus Edwards, Keaton Mitchell, Dalvin Cook. There was a Melvin Gordon sighting, Justice Hill, like none of them are as good. And even though we really like Keaton Mitchell here, like none of them were as good as Derrick Henry was last year.
He could easily be 1,300 yards, 16 touchdowns, very conceivable.
Easy, if not more, 1,000%.
Jay, how about Joe Mixon making the love list here, going to a really good passing offense with C.J. Stroud? Devin Singletary's out. we don't know what Dameon Pierce is going to be this year. This feels like really good touchdown equity for Joe Mixon.
Yep, and they gave him guaranteed money. They extended him immediately, so they clearly believe that he is the guy. I think the thing with Houston as well is their offensive line is just banged up all of last season. Like, you would just project a bit of health regression on that front. Here's the other thing too, is that it's weird to think of this because he was so good. CJ Stroud should get better. Like, he should get better. This is his second year in the league. He was already like the 6th best quarterback in football last year. He has scope to be, like, he could emerge right in that tier of Allen and Burrow. I'm not going to put anyone ever in the tier of Mahomes until, they do it in the playoffs, but he's going to continue to be a monster. The offense was just injured all year. Like, Tank Dell will come back. They're going to have more of a spaced field in a way. So I think Mixon is just going to get a ton of touchdowns and a ton of work.
On a team that had like a so-so offensive line, and it was bad at the beginning, and then they finally got healthier as the season went on, but still, this was a team that was top 12 in running back carries last year. And so, to your point, defensive, all the defensive coordinators that have Houston on their team this year, they're going to sit there and be like, hey, we've got to figure out how to stop C.J. Stroud and Nico Collins and Tank Dell. And so I think that Mixon, you could argue why is he on the love list, because he's a volume-based RB2 that he was in Cincinnati, and now he goes to Houston where he's going to be a volume-based RB2. But I do think that that's an emerging offense, and I would argue that it's actually a better situation for Mixon this year because Chase Brown towards the end started to eat into Mixon a little bit more. Like, Chase Brown's coming, and so here I'm less worried about Dameon Pierce than I am about Chase Brown. And to your point about sort of paying and it's a better division. I'd rather be in the AFC South than the AFC North if you're Joe Mixon. And so he's going to get a massive volume on a really good offense. So this going from, he went from he's released to all of a sudden now landing as the lead back, one of the few situations where he could get a ton of work on a great offense. Makes the love.
I do think the last thing as well, I've never entirely understood all of the Bobby Slowick love. I get that he did a good job and everything, but like, he was extremely conservative in terms of just running the ball as opposed to passing. I thought he almost cost them their season the way he ran the ball against Indianapolis in that final game, where it's just like, why aren't you just putting the ball in CJ Stroud's hands? But all of that stuff, any doubts about Slowick, any conservative, that just plays to Joe Mixon's benefit because they're probably just going to run the ball a little bit more than perhaps they should.
One more running back here, Matthew. Gus Edwards. You talked about this as soon as he signed to the Chargers. We know how much Harbaugh loves the downhill run game, and Gus there on a 2-year, $9 million deal.
He was, in his 4 years as the head coach of the 49ers, Jim Harbaugh, the Niners ranked second in rush rate. Greg Roman, the offensive coordinator, who's coming from Baltimore, where Gus Edwards was his guy, Greg Roman's offenses have ranked top 3 in rush attempts in 7 of his 10 years as an offensive coordinator as well. And so the 2 full seasons that Gus Edwards played under Roman in Baltimore, 2019-2020, Edwards had over 700 rushing yards and a lot of touchdowns. And so I think this is an underrating signing. He's not involved in the passing game. No one's going to be excited when you draft Gus Edwards. He's not a sexy player. He's not a sexy name. But the Chargers are going to be so insanely run heavy, and I think they're going to be good. And so I think Gus Edwards is going to be a dirt cheap double-digit touchdown player for you that you can get like in the 8th round of fantasy drafts. So absolutely, Gus Edwards goes from Baltimore, where he's going to be part of a committee, to, like, at the moment, he's the lead running back for one of the run-heaviest teams in the NFL. That's what the Chargers are going to be this year.
4th place schedule as well for the Chargers, which makes a difference. They're going to be up in games just because they have that easier schedule.
It's going to be either Baltimore or the Chargers that are the run-heaviest team in the NFL this coming year. Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and Rotoworld.com, and I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched, or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest Roto-World fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.